Hi, it's Tina Smith. This is my Module 4 PowerPoint presentation for my Safety Class 220, the spring of 2017. My topic is PPE retraining for individuals that are already employed or have had training already. We're here today to review some of the standard information concerning personal protective equipment, also known as PPE. You've all been selected to participate in the safety program because one or more of you have had the following that may apply. OSHA mandates that we assist in retraining individuals when one of these three circumstances occur. Either there's a change in the workplace that renders the previous training obsolete, there may be a change in the various types of PPE that's being used that would render, of course, previous training obsolete, or there's inadequacies in an effective employee's knowledge or the use of the assigned PPE that indicates the employee has not retained the requisite understanding or skill. At this point, it really doesn't matter which of the three occurred, but that's why your group has been put together. So today's retraining is going to provide just a general overview of PPE that our company uses, and it's also going to assist you in helping to teach the proper way to use and care for the various items. So let's begin. First of all, since you've all had some type training, let's see how much you remember. All four of these items are true or false. First of all, the hazard assessments are conducted only for job functions that involve hazardous materials. Your employer is responsible for selecting PPE. PPE should be inspected before each use. It is not important to keep your PPE clean. How'd you do? Number one is false. Hazard assessments are done for every job function, not just some. The next two are true. Yes, the employer is responsible for selecting whatever protective gear you're going to use. And thirdly, it should be inspected before each and every use. And then again, the last one is false. It is important to keep your PPE clean. Hazard assessments. A hazard assessment, of course, is the process of identifying the hazard associated with any specific task or a specific job. If you can determine what hazards are associated with the job, then you can also know what proper protective gear you'll need, or maybe other relevant protective measures that you'll need to use in order to reduce the risks of injury from any performance of your job duty. Why do we do this? Why do we perform these hazard assessments? Well, OSHA mandates that employers perform these hazard assessments for all of the various jobs that you're going to be engaged in. This retraining is going to benefit you because our company provides you with protective equipment that's specific for your job duties. So as some of you have now changed duties, this may be either new information for you, or for others of you, this can serve as a refresher course. But in any event, you're going to want to evaluate every job function you're going to do. You need to determine if the hazards are present. You're going to need to check hazards for all applicable body parts. And then once you do all that, you'll know what PPE you can start using. During the job safety analysis performed, we want you to take note of any hazards that could potentially cause harm to your eyes. When doing so, ask yourself, while operating your tools or your equipment, could they produce flying debris? You know, flying objects is the number one cause of most major eye injuries in the workplace. If there's no physical object that you need to protect your eyes from, what about chemical ones? Or perhaps some type of gas vapor that could also burn the eyes, maybe liquids that you're using. The point is that you want to take note of any and all hazards, any and all objects that could potentially damage your eye while you're engaging in your standard operations for your job. The system is very important to protect as well. There's airborne dusts and particulates, fumes, vapors, things like that. That's all floating around, and be mindful of these things. Not only that, though, sometimes you can be found in confined spaces. OSHA defines a confined space as one that has maybe inadequate sizing and spacing for an employee, or maybe it has a limited means of access. In any event, when you find yourself in these small spaces, the atmosphere, the air around you, can become very hazardous and dangerous. Perhaps there's not enough of it. There's a lack of oxygen. Or maybe the opposite true. Instead of lacking oxygen, maybe there's a buildup of other toxic gases. In any event, be careful and mindful of your surroundings for your respiratory system when you're performing all of your hazard analysis. Hearing. You want to ask yourself if there's going to be any excessive noise on the job that will expose you to operating. Maybe there's heavy equipment. Maybe there's machinery that's going to be running around you. The effects of exposure to excessive noise can range from a temporary ringing in your ears all the way to permanent hearing loss. OSHA's permissible exposure limit for an 8-hour workday is 90 decibels. Well, what does that mean? You know, a power mower is 96 decibels. A running motorcycle that's 25 feet away from you is 90 decibels. It's imperative that we prevent hearing loss when we're looking for hearing hazards during our job analysis. Be mindful of that. Some of it you cannot repair. Head hazards. When protecting our heads, what do we want to watch for? What are we looking for? Well, are there objects that can fall from above? Does the layout of our workspace have maybe low clearance areas that we can bump our heads on? What about various energy sources? Could an electrical source be released, or maybe could it start up accidentally? Protecting our heads is imperative when we are performing our job analysis, our job safety analysis. Looking up with concern for our heads is important, but what about the things going on beneath us? Be very mindful of anything that's surrounding your feet or your footing. Is the floor slippery? Are there uneven surfaces that can be tripped on? Are there wires crossing paths, or things that we have to step over, or perhaps things rounded that can roll towards us? We want to be very mindful of anything that can affect your foot adversely so that you can properly wear the protective gear necessary to keep your feet healthy and whole. Our hands are another important part of our body. We want to look for sharp objects that perhaps can cut our hands, objects that perhaps could become sharp over time. Are there chemical influences that we have to fool with on a daily basis? Do we have thermal issues? Is it hot? Is it cold? Keeping our bodies healthy and safe is paramount, and it should be our single safety focus when performing these job safety analyses. What have we learned so far? Do we know the answers? Blank causes the majority of eye injuries in the workplace. Lack of adequate blank is a respiratory hazard usually found in jobs and confined spaces. A slippery floor is considered a blank hazard. Be mindful of blank to avoid head injuries. How'd you do? Do you have any questions? We'll pause for a second before we move on. Do you understand how a hazard assessment is conducted? Do you understand how hazards are evaluated in regards to each of our body parts? As of now, if we know the hazard cannot be eliminated or reduced to an acceptable level, every employee must be protected from exposure. You must wear and use the appropriate personal protective equipment provided. So let's go through the PPE for our various body parts we just covered. First of all, wear and care of our eye protection. We want to make sure it fits comfortably. Nothing impedes our vision when we're wearing it. Always put it on prior to performing your job function and make sure you clean it on a regular basis. If for some reason something gets damaged or scratched in a way that impedes your vision, dispose of it. Our respiratory system. We only use items that are medically approved, and we always conduct a fit test first. Before you use any respiratory items, make sure you inspect it. Make sure it's clean, make sure the filters are there, make sure the seal is proper on your face. And when you're finished with it, store it properly so A, you can use it again in the future, or B, another employee can. Either way, it keeps the equipment from being damaged. We also provide hearing protection for you. We provide earplugs, we provide canal caps, and we also provide earmuffs. Again, use them prior to performing your operation. The wear and care of head protection. Make sure your hard hat fits properly. There are straps on the inside that you can adjust for your head type. Inspect it before each use and make sure it's not cracked or damaged in some way that would compromise the equipment. Clean it regularly and use it only for your head. And the same goes for your feet. Make sure your boots fit comfortably. Make sure you inspect them for each use each day. You don't want any holes, you don't want any cracks. If you fool with any chemicals, you don't want it to have compromised your boots in some fashion. Make sure your soles don't have excessive wear and keep. Gloves come in a variety of styles and finishes. So wear a pair that fit. Inspect each pair prior to using it. Keep them clean and dry, and discard them if they become contaminated or if they're compromised in some way. Do you know what PPE protection matches the type of hazards that we've spoken of? Take a second and read over this. See if you can sort it out. Do you have any questions? We've covered the various hazards, and we've also covered the PPE that needs to be used for each. Do you know the appropriate PPE and how it's selected? Do you know if there's limitations on it? How to properly wear it and care for it? I hope so. Here's our key points we want to remember after today: that every job function in every department is assessed for hazards. We want to make sure each part of the body is taken into consideration during these assessments. PPE is selected in response to specific hazards, and proper wear and care of personal protection equipment is necessary to provide effective protection. This concludes our training. Thank you for attending the retraining safety meeting. Performing detailed hazard assessments can benefit your health and your well-being. I'm going to pass out a brief test. You'll have 15 minutes to complete it. Prior to taking the test, please let me know if you have any hazard assessment or PPE questions that's associated with your new duties, if you fall into that category. And good luck.